Yom, old friend. I, chieflet of the Knights of Katarina, have come to uphold my promise. Let the sun shine upon this Lord of Cinder.
Violence often carries a dark and grimy connotation. When I hear the word, I think of conflict, resistance, pain, and domination. In many video games, violence is not only unavoidable, but a necessary means of narrative progression. Through combat, destruction, and death, players achieve milestones, solve puzzles, and conquer their quests. Players don't need to think about the purpose of the violence they commit, often because it is what the game requires them to do. It is presumed that they commit violence because it is a necessary action, a necessary evil. This isn't a novel idea either. Nier director Yoko Taro discusses violence in his own approach to game design. He has a famous quote wherein he discusses his feelings observing war in society. He said, "The vibe I was getting was, you don't have to be insane to kill someone. You just have to think you're right. So that's why I made Nier." In video games, we take violence for granted as the only means of resolving conflict. As comical as it sounds, even Super Mario progresses through the game via eliminating thousands of enemies. In the context of a game, we often think of violence as a necessary evil to overcome an obstacle to good, or perhaps as punishment towards an evil doer. If you choose to be a minion for an evil empire, then a violent revolution is simply your karma, or so the logic goes. Going back to Yoko Taro's words, he feels that games often normalize the act of killing too much, and that he once felt you'd have to be a truly insane person to kill another human, and that is the warped nature of the human mind. While I respect this critique and think it does touch on some very real truths about games as an artistic medium, I also think there's a missing piece of the discourse. A hidden assumption here that we all take for granted and normalize. That is, the assumption that violence is intrinsically about inflicting unwanted harm. It is this assumption that I believe the Souls games interrogate. No matter how graphic the games get, the violence in Souls titles has never struck me as gratuitous. Your battles cause pain and harm, but the pain isn't the point. To me, this is why the Soulsborne games don't feel nearly as intense or graphic as other action games, despite the fact that you literally have to murder your way through areas to progress. Violence is your primary tool, but its purpose is not always to hurt others. Violence is mercy. There are a few stories throughout the Souls series that best illustrate this. There is a famous quote from Nietzsche, especially in reference to Artorias. "Take care when fighting monsters that you don't become one. When you stare into the abyss stares back." What I haven't heard as often is the follow-up. The victory should throw roses into the abyss and say, "Here is my thanks to the monster who didn't succeed in swallowing me alive." In Dark Souls, the abyss is an all-consuming power that corrupts everything it touches, imbuing its subjects with madness. It has a life of its own, quickly eroding the town of Ulasil. As one of the 4 knights of the ruling king Gwyn, Knight Artorias arrived at the abyss-infected town, attempting to halt the spread of evil. But not every story has a happy ending. Try as he might, Artorias did not defeat the father of the abyss, Manus. Instead, he remained at his station, slaying its infected residents one at a time. The abyss corrupts everything, and without his protective talisman, Artorias is no exception. By the time we players encounter Artorias on our journey in Ulasil, we see him holding on to that last shred of sanity, still doing his duty, slaying one monster at a time. Artorias is an honored knight. Even without his sanity, Artorias remained fighting till his last breath. But he can no longer distinguish us from the evil that surrounded him, so he points his sword at us. So what should we do? To kill those who do evil is to rid the world of corruption, contributing to the good. But to kill someone who also strives for the good, it feels cruel. So if we are to point our swords back at Artorias, why are we doing this? If we take a step back from this dilemma and look at what happens after we defeat Artorias, we might glimpse at the cause of our action. As soon as we achieve victory from this duel with Artorias, one of his fellow knights, Chiron, appears in Artorias' arena. She kneels in front of a small grave, mourning the passing of Artorias. When we approach her, she says to us, "Is that not the soul of the man who fell on this spot? He was a dear friend. I wish to pay proper respect with that soul." The soul of Artorias reads, "Soul of Lord Gwyn's knight Artorias, who was consumed by the abyss." The legend that Artorias repelled the abyss only told half of the story. It seems that he was defeated and his honor preserved by some unsung hero who is the true victor over the abyss. So yes, we commit violence against Artorias out of necessity. But in doing so, we liberate him from the shackles of a deteriorating body and mind, guiding his soul to peace. We preserve the honor of an unyielding soldier, crystallizing his legacy in Lordran. Our violence was mercy. One of the most touching moments of my entire gaming experience is embedded within an act of violence. It takes place in Dark Souls 3. A few hours into the game, I encountered an NPC by the name of Sigurd of Katarina. I aided him with a few tasks as I met him at various locations along my journey. I thought my experience with him was going to be just like many others. You help them do a task, they give you an item in exchange, and you part ways. Until I walked through the fog door to Yorm the Giant in the profaned capital, and Sigurd appeared. The cutscene I showed at the beginning of this video appears at this very moment. Sigurd declares, "Yorm, old friend, I, Sigurd of the Knights of Katarina, have come to uphold my promise. Let the sun shine upon this Lord of Cinder." What is this promise he holds? The Soul of Yorm item that we obtain from slaying him states, Yorm is the descendant of an ancient conqueror, but was asked by the very people once subjugated to lead them, serving as both a weighty blade and a stone-hard shield. We know that Yorm was once a ruler of his people, most likely put into power so that he may control the profaned flame, a fire that defiles the natural cycle of flames. However, by the time we face Yorm, we see that his eyes glow red, like those affected by the abyss or have gone hollow. Yorm no longer recognizes his dear friend Sigurd. He too has succumbed to the very evil he wished to subdue. In order to sufficiently stand against Yorm, we need to retrieve a weapon inside the arena, near Yorm's throne, the Storm Ruler. Weapon description reads, "Greatsword with a broken blade, also known as the Giant Slayer for the residual strength of storm that brings giants to their knees." Yorm the Giant once held 2 of these, but gave one to the humans that doubted him and left the other to a dear friend before facing his fate as a Lord of Cinder. It is clear then that we picked up the Storm Ruler left to the humans, and Sigurd has the other. With all of this information in mind, the nature of the promise becomes obvious. This promise Sigurd holds is to kill Yorm. Yorm left these weapons so that we may slay him if he turned his back against his protective intentions. We commit violence against Yorm so that we may carry out his wishes. He foresaw the possibility that there might be forces out of his control that would turn him against himself, so he built a failsafe. We are that failsafe. A terrible force has consumed him, subjugating his power and body to its malicious whims. By killing Yorm, we also eradicate the madness that puppeteers him, freeing him from the state he would not have otherwise tolerated. I truly admire Yorm's moral integrity. As a mighty giant, he was humbled to recognize that even with the purest intentions, there is still a possibility that he might be corrupted by external forces, driven to act against his own will. So in killing him, we preserved his legacy, his integrity. Sigurd knew this, and that's why he said, "Let the sun shine upon this Lord of Cinder." Violence is redemption. Imagine being one of the world's most powerful warriors, single-handedly holding back the destined falling stars with magic, halting the spread of an all-consuming blight. Only, in the wake of the battles, you are eaten alive by this blight, sanity lost in the wind, and cursed to feast on friends and foes alike, howling at the sky. This is the life, if it can even be called that, of General Radahn in the lands between. To quote Gideon Ofnir the All-Knowing, General Radahn, the famed Red Lion and Scourge of the Stars, is a ferocious warrior. We hear of Radahn's reputation long before we meet him. When we reach the center of the rot-infested Caelid, we arrive at the Radahn Festival hosted by the witch hunter Jaren. He was once a soldier who served in Radahn's Redmane army, and as such, he remains in charge of the Radahn Festival so that his master shall receive an honorable death on the battlefield. Among many other NPCs, we're here to challenge Radahn, or rather, what was left of him. If he is defeated, then we will have given this general an honorable death. And if we are defeated, well, we will then become part of the pile of corpses waiting to be eaten. This battle shall become the last one that ends Radahn's miserable state of being. I often think back on my encounter with Radahn. Even though the Radahn I saw was only the remnant of an eroded general, his aggressive attacks and imposing posture made me wonder what the scale of his power was like during his golden days. I saw the determination of a loyal soldier fighting, just as he was before he lost his mind. Radahn wanders the wailing dunes when we arrive, chasing us away with his great bow's rain of arrows. It was truly a sight to behold as he manipulated gravity magic against us, eventually turning into a meteor himself. Once defeated, he faded into the wind. Then a cutscene appeared, showing a meteor striking the ground far into the distance. Without Radahn holding it back with gravitational magic, the destined star fell. We gave Radahn the honorable death on the battlefield as he wished. Instead of a mix of guilt and triumph that usually followed a victory, I felt a sense of peace. I had given my all in this final battle, respecting Radahn's footing as a soldier fighting for his own faith. I ended his life, thus ending his suffering. When I exited Radahn's arena, Jaren's dialogue further reinforced my sense of peace. He says, "At last, the war festival has ended. Brave champion, you have our gratitude. The celebration was spectacular. General Radahn is surely pleased. Festering with rot and crippled by madness, all he wanted was an honorable death." Once again, we enacted a hero's wishes by committing violence. Our violence was mercy. The battle against Artorias, Yorm, and Radahn are just 3 examples of this unique relationship with violence in Souls games. I've encountered more than I could fit into a single video. Each time I come across one, I feel a sense of guilt, shame, or twisted triumph at the start of the battle. Once the dust settles, though, I am left with a strange sense of peace. I liberated these heroes from madness, putting their tortured souls to rest. I gave them mercy through violence. Through these stories, FromSoft challenges the presumption that violence is intrinsically about unwanted harm. It feels as though the games are having a dialogue with me about the nature of agency as a whole. What purpose do my actions serve? Why am I doing any of this? What role does my violence play in the world? And for what purpose does it exist? In this case, From Software taught me that violence can mean something other than decapitating an enemy. It can also be saying goodbye to an old friend. At the end here, I want to thank my Patreon and Discord community members for supporting me throughout my creation process. Our discussions on Souls games and your experiences with them leading up to this video greatly contributed to this final product. You guys keep me on my toes and inspire my thoughts on many topics. So thank you for creating a mindful and engaging environment. If you're interested in joining us, links are in the description for our server and Patreon. Until next time,